In a world where time travel had become the ultimate taboo, right up there with pet dinosaurs and talking to strangers, Leo Finch was just your average historian. Sure, he was brilliant and a little too obsessed with the past, but he was also painfully aware that his career was akin to studying fossils, static, unchanging, and a tad dusty. Leo worked at the Museum of Temporal History, where he specialized in what the world referred to as the good old days, those chaotic, unruly years before the great time travel ban of 2195. It was a peaceful, sanitized society now, but beneath the surface, Leo sensed something was amiss. His daily grind involved leading groups of wide-eyed children through exhibits filled with interactive displays of bygone eras, complete with holograms of famous historical figures and virtual reality experiences that simulated the more boring moments of history. And here we have the signing of the Treaty of Westphalia. Leo would declare enthusiastically, only to watch as half the kids stared blankly, eyes glazed over like they were trapped in a time loop of their own. Today was no different. Dressed in a slightly rumpled tweed jacket and the world's least flattering spectacles, Leo was about to begin his spiel about the Industrial Revolution when a flash of shimmering light caught his eye. It danced in the corner of the room, flickering like a faulty neon sign. Curious, he stepped closer, hoping it was a glitch in the museum's state-of-the-art holographic system rather than a wormhole opening up to a catastrophic timeline. "Hey, you okay?" Leo called out to the flickering figure. To his astonishment, the light coalesced into a young woman, all bright eyes and wild hair, clad in what could only be described as an eccentric mashup of historical and futuristic fashion. It was a hodgepodge of styles, with flared pants that looked like they were plucked from the 70s and a jacket that shimmered like a disco ball. "I'm Zara," she announced, grinning broadly as if she had just won a prize at a carnival. "And I'm from the future." Leo blinked, half expecting her to dissolve into pixels. "Sure you are," he replied dryly. "And I'm the King of England. Do you have a royal decree or something?" "I can prove it," she insisted, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "You see, the peace you enjoy today is a lie. I'm here to save history." At that moment, the museum's high-tech intercom crackled to life. "Attention all visitors, please refrain from time travel-related discussions within the museum premises. Remember, time travel is strictly prohibited." Zara rolled her eyes. "See? It's all a cover-up." Before Leo could respond, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, oddly shaped device. It looked like a cross between a remote control and a vintage Game Boy. "Watch this." "Wait, what are you doing?" Leo's voice had a hint of panic, but it was too late. Zara pressed a button, and the room around them warped and twisted like a funhouse mirror. The last thing Leo saw was the horrified faces of the schoolchildren before everything went dark. When Leo opened his eyes, he found himself sprawled on the cobblestones of a bustling medieval market. He pushed himself up, dusting off his tweed jacket. "This can't be happening," he muttered, glancing around at the throngs of people in tunics and armor, trading goods in a cacophony of shouts and laughter. "Welcome to 14th century England," Zara exclaimed, practically bouncing on her heels. "Isn't it amazing? The sights, the smells, the smells." "Like what?" "Rotting cabbage and horse manure," Leo replied, wrinkling his nose. "Exactly." Zara laughed, her infectious enthusiasm cutting through his skepticism. "And you know what? This is a pivotal moment in history. We need to find out how time travel got banned." Leo took a deep breath, the reality of the situation settling in. "Wait, how are we supposed to do that? You can't just waltz up to people and ask, 'Hey, how did you feel about the whole time travel ban? Of course we can. Zara grinned, a spark of adventure lighting her eyes. We'll blend in. Just follow my lead. With that, she grabbed his hand and dragged him into the fray. Leo protested, his protests drowned out by the buzz of the market. Zara led him through stalls filled with vibrant fruits, handmade wares, and the occasional street performer juggling flaming torches. He couldn't help but chuckle at the absurdity of his situation. One moment, he was in a sterile museum, and the next, he was trying to keep up with a time-traveling woman who clearly had no concept of subtlety. As they approached a food stall selling what appeared to be large, suspiciously lumpy pastries, Zara turned to Leo with an impish grin. Want to try one? They're called meat pies. Pass, Leo replied quickly, his historian's instincts screaming at him about the questionable hygiene of medieval cuisine. Suit yourself. Zara said, chomping down on one with glee. Delicious. Just then, a commotion erupted nearby. A group of armored knights was arguing over a game of dice, their voices rising in a dramatic crescendo. Leo watched, fascinated, as one knight accused another of cheating, gesturing wildly with his arms. See? Even in the past, people have their squabbles, Zara remarked, her eyes alight with excitement. This is the essence of history, Leo. It's messy, chaotic, and beautiful. Leo couldn't help but smile despite himself. Zara's enthusiasm was infectious, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of adventure. He was no longer just an observer of history, he was living it, and the chaotic energy around him was thrilling. Okay, I'll admit it, he said, shaking his head in disbelief. This is kind of amazing. Just wait until we find the real story behind the time travel ban. Zara said, her eyes gleaming with determination. Little did they know, their journey was only beginning, and history had plenty of surprises in store, some of which would send them careening through time and space in ways they could never have imagined. As they wove through the market, Leo felt a strange exhilaration. Maybe this time, he wouldn't just be documenting history. He might actually be part of it, if he could survive Zara's unpredictable escapades and figure out just what the future held for them. And so began their wild adventure through time, a comedy of errors wrapped in a quest for truth, where the past was as colorful as the future, and nothing was ever quite what it seemed. Zara tugged Leo deeper into the heart of the market, weaving through crowds of townsfolk haggling over fruits, fabrics, and meats. The energy was electric, and Leo could hardly believe he was here, in the thick of history rather than just studying it from behind a glass case. Come on, we need to find someone who knows about the ban, Zara urged, her eyes scanning the lively scene. Maybe a local historian or, oh, how about that guy? She pointed excitedly at a wizened old man seated beside a cart piled high with scrolls and quills, his long beard nearly blending into the parchment he was scribbling on. Leo hesitated. You want to ask a street vendor about time travel? Are you sure he won't just sell us a fish? Trust me, she said, bounding over to the old man. Excuse me, sir. Can we ask you a question? The old man looked up, blinking slowly as if trying to decide whether they were worth his time. Depends on the question, he grumbled, scratching his beard. Do you know anything about time travel? Zara asked, her voice bubbling with enthusiasm. Time travel? Bah! Nonsense, he scoffed, dismissing them with a wave of his hand. Best not to dwell on such fancies, young lady. Focus on the present. Zara pouted, but Leo stepped forward, sensing an opportunity. But sir, what about the past? What if understanding it could help us today? The old man squinted at Leo, a flicker of interest sparking in his eyes. "You a scholar, boy?" "Something like that," Leo replied. "We're trying to understand why time travel was banned." "Surely, it must have been a significant decision." The old man sighed, rubbing his temples. It was. Too many wanted to rewrite their fates, meddle with time. The last group that tried ended up causing quite a ruckus. History ain't meant to be changed, and the powers that be took action. Ruckus? Zara chimed in, leaning closer. What kind of ruckus? Let's just say it involved an army, a battle that should never have been fought, and a lot of chaos, he replied, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. After that, the decree came down from on high, no more time travel. Keepers of time started enforcing it, punishing those who even dared to consider it. Keepers of time? Leo asked, his heart racing. What are they? Shadowy figures, the old man said, leaning back, eyes narrowing. They watch from the shadows, ensuring that history stays as it is. You see those bigwigs up there in their fancy towers? He gestured to the distant castle looming over the town. They do their bidding, and anyone who defies them, well, let's just say they don't last long. Zara glanced at Leo, excitement bubbling between them. We need to find out more about these keepers. They're the ones pulling the strings. Now hold on, the old man cautioned, his voice suddenly grave. You youngsters are playing with fire. The keepers don't take kindly to those poking around in their affairs. You'll need to be careful. Leo glanced at Zara, who was practically vibrating with enthusiasm. Careful is my middle name, she quipped, earning a skeptical look from the old man. Good luck with that, lass, he muttered, returning to his scrolls. Thanks for your help. Zara chirped, pulling Leo away from the cart. Let's find those keepers. If they're really keeping history hidden, we might just be able to expose them. Sure, but how do we find them? Leo asked, his thoughts racing. The thrill of adventure was intoxicating, but the reality of their situation weighed heavily on his mind. Word on the street is that they meet at the old clock tower, Zara said, her tone conspiratorial. It's supposed to be abandoned, but if anyone knows anything about time, it's them. An abandoned clock tower? That sounds a bit cliché, don't you think? Leo said, a mix of skepticism and amusement coloring his voice. Maybe, Zara grinned, but clichés exist for a reason. Let's go. They navigated the winding streets of the medieval town, the sun casting long shadows as it dipped lower in the sky. Each step felt heavier than the last, filled with anticipation and the weight of the unknown. As they neared the clock tower, Leo couldn't help but feel the thrill of possibility. It stood tall and imposing, vines creeping up its sides, a reminder of the passage of time itself. The clock face, cracked and dim, seemed to mock them as they approached. Do you think it's really abandoned? Leo asked, glancing around for any signs of life. Zara pushed the creaking door open, and it groaned in protest. Only one way to find out. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of age. Sunlight filtered through broken windows, illuminating shafts of dust that danced in the stillness. The interior was cavernous, filled with towering gears and mechanisms that had long ceased to function. Wow, Leo breathed, stepping inside. This is incredible. Right? It feels like a relic of another era, Zara replied, her eyes shining. Now, where would they hide? They split up, Leo wandering deeper into the tower while Zara inspected the outer edges. He examined the large gears, half expecting them to start spinning again with a flick of a switch. Instead, they remained dormant, a silent testament to the passage of time. As he turned a corner, Leo stumbled upon a small chamber hidden behind a series of shelves. The walls were lined with books, their spines cracked and dusty. His heart raced. This could be a treasure trove of information. "Zara! Come check this out," he called, his voice echoing through the tower. She appeared moments later, eyes wide with excitement. "What did you find?" "Looks like a library," Leo said, gesturing to the shelves. "But more importantly, check this out." He picked up a dusty tome, its title barely legible. "It's all about time travel. There are records of past travelers and their journeys. Let's see." Zara grabbed the book, flipping through the pages eagerly. Suddenly, they heard a noise, a faint but distinct clicking sound. They froze, exchanging wide-eyed glances. The noise was coming from somewhere deep within the tower, a rhythmic tapping that echoed ominously. "Do you think it's the keepers?" Zara whispered, her voice tinged with both excitement and fear. "Only one way to find out," Leo said, his pulse quickening. They crept toward the sound, their footsteps muffled by the thick dust. As they rounded a corner, they stumbled upon a hidden staircase spiraling down into darkness. The clicking grew louder, now accompanied by hushed voices. "Should we?" Zara asked, her expression a mix of thrill and trepidation. "Definitely," Leo replied, his curiosity winning over his caution. They descended cautiously, the air growing cooler and thicker as they moved deeper into the tower's bowels. The voices became clearer, and Leo strained to catch what they were saying. "Cannot let anyone find out about the time streams," a low voice warned. "If they discover the truth, everything we've worked for will unravel." "They're already on to us," another voice said, sharper and more authoritative. "We must tighten our grip. No more loose ends." Leo exchanged a glance with Zara, the gravity of their situation sinking in. These were the keepers, and they were discussing something monumental. Zara leaned closer to the door at the bottom of the stairs, and Leo did the same, their hearts racing. They could see a flickering light through the cracks, illuminating the shadows of figures standing in the room beyond. "Are we ready for this?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ready or not, here we go." Zara grinned, pushing the door open just enough to peek inside. The room was dimly lit by candles and filled with large, swirling maps of time, each marked with dates and events that looked familiar, and yet eerily altered. The keepers were gathered around a massive table, poring over documents that seemed to pulse with energy. "What's happening?" Leo whispered, his heart pounding in his chest. "They're manipulating time," Zara replied, her voice a mix of awe and horror. "This is worse than we thought." Just then, one of the figures turned, and Leo's breath caught in his throat. The keeper was dressed in flowing robes, their face obscured by shadows. But what truly struck Leo was the glint of something metallic in their hand, a device similar to the one Zara had used to pull them into this mess. "They can't be allowed to change history," the keeper said, their voice cold and resolute. "If they succeed, the consequences will be catastrophic." "We'll ensure it never happens," another keeper replied, slamming a fist on the table. "Our grip on time must remain absolute." Leo exchanged a panicked glance with Zara, both realizing the enormity of what they were witnessing. They had stumbled upon a conspiracy that could alter the course of history itself. "Now what?" Leo whispered, heart racing. "We need to gather evidence," Zara said, determination sparking in her eyes. "If we can expose them, we might just be able to stop this." Leo nodded, his fear momentarily eclipsed by as Leo and Zara navigated the bustling market. They exchanged ideas about how to rally support. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the scene, but Leo felt the chill of urgency. They needed allies, people who understood the importance of their mission. Who do you think would believe us? Leo asked, glancing around. Most folks here seem content with the status quo. Zara's eyes sparkled with determination. We need to find those who feel trapped by this so-called peace. Maybe someone with a reputation for being a little unconventional. Leo raised an eyebrow. Unconventional? You mean like the town's resident conspiracy theorist? Exactly. Zara exclaimed, her excitement palpable. Old Man Thorn. He's always ranting about how the government's hiding secrets and manipulating history. If anyone's willing to listen to us, it's him. All right, let's track him down. Leo nodded, his resolve hardening. They threaded their way through the throng, dodging stalls and groups of shoppers. Zara led the way, her instincts guiding them toward the edge of the market, where the more eccentric vendors often set up shop. Finally, they spotted a small, cluttered booth covered in mismatched flyers, each one promising revelations about the past and future. Old Man Thorn. Zara called, rushing toward the booth. The man behind the counter looked up, his wild gray hair and mismatched clothing giving him the appearance of a wizard gone rogue. He squinted at them, clearly unimpressed. What do you want, youngsters? Here to peddle more lies? No, we need your help. Zara said, urgency in her voice. We have information about the Keepers of Time. Thorn's eyes widened slightly. The Keepers? You've got my attention. He leaned forward, his demeanor shifting from skeptical to intrigued. What do you know? We've discovered that they're manipulating history. Leo jumped in, breathless. We overheard them discussing their plans to tighten control over time. They've hidden truths that could change everything. Change everything? Thorn echoed, his interest piqued. You must be careful, though. The Keepers don't take kindly to those who dig too deep. Zara leaned in, her voice a whisper. We need to expose them. If we can gather enough evidence and allies, we can challenge their grip on time. Evidence, you say? Thorn stroked his beard thoughtfully. You're going to need something substantial. The kind of proof that can't be dismissed as mere fancy or folly. Like what? Leo asked, feeling the weight of the challenge before them like a recording. Thorn replied, a glint of mischief in his eyes. A direct capture of their meetings, their plans, something that would make even the most skeptical believer take notice. Zara's eyes lit up. We have to get back into the tower and record them. Bold, but foolish, Thorn cautioned, shaking his head. The Keepers will be on high alert now that they know someone's snooping around. You'll need a plan. Then let's make one, Leo said, determination surging through him. We can create a distraction and sneak in while they're occupied. Thorn nodded slowly, a grin creeping across his face. You two are more spirited than most. Very well. I can help with a few tricks. But you'll need to be quick. The Keepers are meticulous. If they catch wind of your intentions, it'll be the last adventure you ever embark on. Let's get started, then. Zara declared, her enthusiasm infectious. Thorn rummaged through his cluttered booth, pulling out various odds and ends. He produced a small, brass gadget that resembled a cross between a compass and a pocket watch. This is a time sense modulator. It'll help you detect when the Keepers are in the tower, but it's not perfect. You'll have to rely on your instincts. Leo took the device, its surface warm to the touch. How does it work? Just point it toward the tower. It will vibrate when they're nearby. But be warned, using it will draw attention to you if they're close. So make sure you've got your cover story straight. Got it, Zara said, her face serious for a moment. We'll need to act fast. The longer we wait, the more time they have to reinforce their defenses. Here, Thorn continued, handing them a small pouch filled with strange, shimmering dust. This is invisibility powder. Sprinkle it on yourselves, and you'll blend into the surroundings for a short while. Use it wisely. Wow, this is fantastic! Zara exclaimed, her excitement bubbling over again. Leo took the pouch, feeling a mix of awe and trepidation. And you're sure this works? Trust me, it's worked for me plenty of times when I've had to make a hasty escape, Thorn said with a wink. Now go, before I change my mind. Thank you, Zara said, grabbing Leo's arm and pulling him away. They raced back through the market, their hearts pounding with adrenaline and purpose. As they approached the clock tower, Leo held the time sense modulator tightly, feeling it pulse slightly in his palm. Do you think they'll be there? He asked, glancing nervously at Zara. We won't know until we try, she replied, her expression fierce. Stay focused. As they reached the tower, they crouched behind the entrance, taking a moment to gather their thoughts. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a dusky twilight in its wake. Okay, here's the plan, Zara said, her voice low. We'll sprinkle the invisibility powder on ourselves as we enter. Then we'll use the modulator to find out if the keepers are inside. If they are, we'll have to wait for an opportune moment to sneak in and set up the recording. Let's do this, Leo said, a sense of excitement washing over him. They sprinkled the powder over themselves, the dust glimmering as it settled into their clothes. With one last glance at each other, they stepped into the tower, the familiar scent of old wood and dust greeting them. Inside, the air felt electric with tension. They crept forward, Leo activating the modulator. It pulsed steadily in his hand, guiding them deeper into the tower. As they approached the staircase, the clicking sounds returned, more pronounced now. Can you hear that? Zara whispered, her eyes wide with anticipation. Yeah, it's definitely coming from below, Leo replied. They made their way down the stairs, the darkness swallowing them as they descended. At the bottom, they found the same chamber as before, but this time, the atmosphere was charged with urgency. The keepers were gathered around the table, their voices rising in a heated discussion. The timeline is unstable. We need to eliminate the anomalies before they spread, one keeper insisted, gesturing emphatically. If we do that, we risk exposing ourselves. The last thing we need is an uprising, another countered, the tension palpable. Leo felt a chill run down his spine. They were discussing plans to reinforce their control over time itself. Now's our chance, Zara whispered, her voice steady. They crept closer, using the shadows to their advantage. Leo's heart raced as they found a vantage point behind a large gear, the flickering candlelight illuminating the keepers' faces. Zara pulled out a small recording device she had snatched from Thorn's booth, a clever little contraption that would capture both sound and visual. Ready? She asked, a hint of adrenaline in her voice. Let's do this, Leo replied. Zara pressed the button, and the device hummed to life, capturing every word. The keepers continued their argument, their voices growing more intense. We must ensure that the past remains unchanged. If anyone discovers the truth about our actions, it could unravel everything. Leo's grip tightened on the modulator, feeling it vibrate in his hand. He exchanged a glance with Zara, both of them realizing the gravity of their situation. They were on the precipice of a revelation that could change everything, but they needed to gather enough evidence to make it count. Suddenly, one of the keepers turned, a look of suspicion on their face. "I think we're being watched." "Quick!" Zara hissed, ducking behind the gear. They pressed against the wall, hearts pounding in their chests. The keepers exchanged glances, suspicion hanging heavy in the air. Leo held his breath, willing himself to remain calm. After a tense moment, the discussion resumed, the keepers unaware of how close they had come to discovery. Leo breathed a sigh of relief, but the tension was far from over. "Let's gather more," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. "They can't notice us." The keepers continued to argue, revealing more about their plans to manipulate time. Leo felt a surge of determination. They had to expose this. This wasn't just about them anymore, it was about everyone who had lived under the guise of peace, unaware of the hidden truths. "Once we implement the new measures, the timeline will stabilize," one keeper declared. "No more loose ends. We can control the narrative." Leo's stomach churned at the thought. "We have to get this out," he murmured to Zara, his voice low. Suddenly, the modulator began to vibrate violently in Leo's hand, a clear signal that the keepers were approaching. "Time to move," Zara urged, her eyes wide with urgency. They slipped back toward the entrance, careful not to make a sound. As they reached the staircase, Leo glanced back, hoping to catch one last glimpse of the keepers. They were still engrossed in their conversation, unaware of the impending danger. Just as they stepped onto the main floor, the door creaked ominously behind them. Leo felt a rush of panic. They had to get out before they were discovered. "Go, go," Zara urged, and they sprinted toward the exit, adrenaline surging through their veins. They burst out into the night, the cool air hitting them like a splash of cold water. "Did we get everything?" Leo asked, his breath coming in sharp gasps. "Absolutely," Zara replied, her eyes alight with excitement. "We've got enough to expose them." But just as they began to catch their breath, a shadow fell over them. The unmistakable figure of a keeper emerged from the darkness, their face obscured by a hood. "Thought you could sneak away, did you?" the keeper said, voice low and menacing. "Run!" Zara shouted, grabbing Leo's hand as they dashed away from the tower, the keeper in hot pursuit. They raced through the streets, heartbeats echoing in their ears. Leo glanced back to see the keeper gaining on them, their strides long and purposeful. "Quick! This way!" Zara shouted, leading him down a narrow alley. They ducked into a side street, pressing against the cool stone walls, breathless and wide-eyed. "Do you think we lost them?" Leo panted, his heart racing. "Not yet," Zara replied, peering around the corner. "We need to find somewhere to hide." "Let's try that abandoned shop," Leo suggested, pointing to a weathered building just ahead. They slipped inside, the door creaking ominously as they entered. The air was thick with dust and shadows, but it provided the cover they needed. "Do you think they'll look for us here?" Leo asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Hopefully not," Zara said, glancing around the dim interior. "Let's just wait for a moment and catch our breath." They found a corner to huddle in, their hearts still pounding from the adrenaline. Leo fished the recording device from his pocket, his fingers trembling slightly. "We did it, Zara. We actually got the evidence," he said, awe creeping into his voice. Zara's face broke into a triumphant grin. "We did. This is the first step toward exposing the keepers. They won't know what hit them." But their moment of triumph was short-lived. Outside, the sound of footsteps echoed, and a low voice drifted through the door. "Search every building. They can't have gone far." "They're looking for us," Leo said, panic rising in his chest. "We need to move," Zara urged, her expression steely. "We can't stay here." Just as they prepared to leave their hiding spot, the door swung open, revealing the keeper who had chased them. Leo and Zara exchanged frantic glances, realizing they had only moments to escape. "Quick, through the back," Zara urged, pointing to a narrow doorway behind the counter. They darted toward it just as the keeper stepped inside, the tension thick as they squeezed through the door. They found themselves in a narrow alleyway behind the shop, the cool night air hitting them like a refreshing wave. "Where now?" Leo gasped, glancing around for options. Zara scanned the area, her mind racing. "We can't go back toward the tower. We need to find somewhere safe to lay low and regroup." "Maybe we can reach the edge of town," Leo suggested, motioning toward the trees lining the outskirts. "Good idea. Let's go," Zara replied, taking off down the alley. They sprinted through the darkened streets, weaving between buildings and avoiding the main thoroughfare. The sound of footsteps faded behind them, but they knew it was only a matter of time before the keepers would be on their trail again. As they reached the trees, they paused for a moment, catching their breath beneath the cover of the branches. "Do you think they'll give up?" Leo asked, his voice shaky. "Not a chance," Zara replied, determination etched in her features. "But we have the recording. That's our key to exposing them." Leo nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "We need to get this back to Thorn. He can help us spread the word." "Right," Zara said, glancing back toward the town. "Let's move before they regroup." They made their way through the trees, their footsteps light against the forest floor. As they ventured deeper into the woods, the sounds of the town faded away, replaced by the rustling of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. "We need to be careful," Leo cautioned, his senses heightened. "If the keepers have eyes everywhere, we can't afford to be caught again." Zara nodded, her face serious. "Agreed. We'll stick to the shadows and avoid any main paths. We have to get to Thorn's place without drawing attention." They pressed on, navigating the underbrush and keeping their voices low. After what felt like an eternity, they finally emerged on the outskirts of town, a sense of relief washing over them. "There's Thorn's place," Zara pointed, spotting the familiar cluttered booth just beyond the edge of the trees. "Let's hurry," Leo urged, and they made their way toward the booth, heartbeats racing in anticipation of what lay ahead. As they approached, the old man looked up, a mixture of concern and curiosity in his gaze. "You two made it back. I was starting to worry." "We have the recording," Zara exclaimed, pulling it from her pocket with pride. Thorn's eyes widened, and he leaned forward, a gleam of interest sparking in his expression. "You really did it? You have proof of their machinations?" Leo nodded vigorously, handing over the device. "You need to see this, Thorn. It's worse than we imagined." Thorn took the device, his hands shaking slightly as he examined it. "You could expose them, you know. This could turn the tide." Zara exchanged a glance with Leo, hope blooming in her chest. "We need to get this out to the public. People have to know the truth." "Then we must act quickly," Thorn said, a fire igniting in his eyes. "I have contacts who can help us spread the word. We'll gather a group of like-minded individuals who aren't afraid to stand up against the keepers." "Let's do it," Leo said, adrenaline surging through him. As Thorn began making calls, Leo and Zara shared a look of determination. They had come so far, and now they were on the cusp of something monumental. They would expose the keepers and unveil the truth behind the facade of peace that had ruled their world for so long. With Thorn's help, they began assembling a small group of allies, each person eager to fight against the oppressive grip of the keepers. The air was electric with anticipation as they plotted their next moves, the weight of history pressing down on their shoulders. "This is just the beginning," Zara said, a fierce smile on her face. "We're going to change everything." And as the night deepened, their resolve only grew stronger, fueled by the hope of a brighter future, one where the truth would reign free, and the shackles of time would be broken forever.